that. Now, in this video, I am going to share my notes from studying the first book of the New Testament, which is the Gospel according to Matthew. And now we're on chapter 2. On this chapter, we'll talk about the wise men, the possibility of how the Star of Bethlehem came to be. Was it really just one big star? And the idea of worshiping the child Jesus and where he might have gone aside from Egypt before moving back to Nazareth. We'll also talk about the lost years. That means, as I did in the previous post, I'm going to include some information or actual excerpt from the book Jesus and the Essenes by Dolores Cannon, since many of the scholars also believe that Jesus was also an Essene. Read the entire chapter of Matthew chapter 2 online. We can always go to Bible Hub. I will add a link down below the description. So you will read with me as I record that screen and read from here. The Magi's visit. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east of Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and are come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they said unto him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privately called his wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and said, Go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found him, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way, flight to Egypt. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night, and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of the Egypt have I called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all children that were in Bethlehem, and in all coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted because they are not. They returned to Nazareth. But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose and took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judea in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither. Notwithstanding being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, He shall be called a Nazarene. That's chapter 2. Let's first focus on the Magi's visit, what was said in Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 to 2. Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born of the Jews? for we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. One of my questions as I read this is who these Magi or wise men were and where they came from. Upon reading about them in Dolores' book, the Jesus and the Essenes, I learned not only where they came from, but also more about that huge star in the east with a long tail that was so bright during the birth of Christ. Sudi said that these three wise men came from Ur, and this Ur is not a place, according to him, it's their descent, ethnicity. There were also supposedly four Magi, one from each direction. I'm going to explain this later, but one never made it. He described how this star was formed. He said, "It was foretold in the heavens, it was the coming together of the planets and stars, and they used this to guide them," meaning the Magi. They saw the star and knew it for what it was. If this is true, this star in the east didn't just pop up out of nowhere with no scientific explanation whatsoever, nor did it just disappear after Jesus Christ's birth, after Jesus was born. It looked like a formation of four stars with planets, and the Magi had been watching the sky long enough to recognize them, long enough to recognize the formation happening in the sky before their eyes. And when they saw that, they knew that the prophecy is about to come true. Sudi, from this book again, he witnessed the formation of this huge star. And here are some excerpts. "There is a beam, it's like a tail. It comes down with all of the light. It is like a focus that drops straight from the star. It is like most of the light is being focused, in that it is no longer scattered about, but in a precise point. It is about the brightness of a very large full moon." That's pretty much the same description of how we picture the star. But all I thought was that this star just came from out of nowhere, and it was just brighter than any other stars. And then when it served its purpose, it just disappeared. I never really thought that it wasn't just one star, but it's possible. We had another description before this huge star came together. It is like the heavens themselves have opened up and all of the light is just shining down upon us. It's like the sun of day. It's so bright, they come together, he said. Another new information for me can also be read on the same page where Sudi mentioned that many of these scenes they were waiting on the hills above Qumran to watch the stars come together to see the prophecy being fulfilled. It is like the heavens themselves have opened up and all of the light is just shining down upon us. It is like the sun of day. It's so bright, they come together. Imagine being in that moment, witnessing the prophecy their fathers had told them happening before their eyes. I could almost feel their awe when I read that, their excitement, Sudi's excitement. Do you feel that? Now, let's go back to the first and second verse of this chapter, which read again, but we'll focus more on worshiping Jesus. "Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east of Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him." The Magi wanted to worship the king of the Jews, referring to the newborn baby Jesus. And reading from Matthew chapter 2 verses 11, we will see that they really did worship him. "On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then they opened up their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh." Even if we look at the Greek word used in both verses, this word, the prosekinesan, I'm not sure if I'm not pronouncing that right, and look at other verses in the New Testament where it's used for, it has only been translated into one word in English, which is worship. If you noticed here, worship, worship, worship. They're worshiping Jesus as a man normally worships God. What is this thing that some people say that Jesus never told the people to worship him, but only to worship God? Muslims believe that Jesus was just a prophet, like their Muhammad. Is that true? Dolores also said this in her book, in reference to the virgin birth that we talked about in the previous chapter, page 278. I'm going to read from here too. For a change, there are many learned theologians that do not believe in the concept of virgin birth. Why was it necessary? He was transformed into a god by people who did not understand the reasons behind his coming. He did not want to be a god. He never intended to be worshipped. That was man's doing. What better way to honor and remember him than by trying to live like him? I think what we need to do is to just continue to read all the four Gospels from this book to see if this is really true. Did Jesus really never wanted people to worship him? Worshipping him, Jesus Christ, that's how Christianity started. I wonder what we will find out at the end of the scripture sprint. If you want to discover it with me, follow me on this publication that I will put at the description below, or subscribe to this YouTube channel right now and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of the chapters that we'll talk about. And let's just keep learning together. What do you think? Now we'll go to the travels, the lost years. As we read in Matthew chapter 2:23, that's the end of this chapter. And he came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. But where was he before that? If in the scriptures read that he went to Egypt, right, with his family. But this is suggesting something else, not just Egypt. From this book, I learned that he was with the Essenes. And also, his cousin was there with him, John the Baptist. Because if he wasn't there with him, King Herod might have also killed his cousin, John the Baptist. Where was he in his lost years? Because after this chapter, we'll read from chapter 3. It's already talking about John the Baptist's ministry. Where was he during the time that he was 12 until he was in his 30s? So some theologians believe that Jesus might have traveled before his ministry because of those lost years, meaning that no one recorded the years he lived from the age of 12 until he was in his 30s. Aside from that, and we can't deny this either, there were many of his teachings that are similar to what we learn from ancient religions like the Indians, Hinduism, Buddhism, and the Chinese, Confucianism, Taoism. So Dolores, as she wrote in her book, was also curious about this. She asked Sudi about it. Where did Jesus go in his travels? And Sudi answered this. Where did he not go? He traveled all over most of the world. As we know it, it is said that Joseph of Arimathea, his uncle, went with him. By the end of this book, in the addendum, Dolores also added information she learned from her research. This part, addendum added in 2001. And this is what she said about Jesus, Mary, and Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph was not only an influential member of the Sanhedrin, which is a legislative member of the provincial Roman Senate, he was also really wealthy. He was the one who controlled the tin and lead industry back in the day, being a metal magnet, and he exported tin from the mines of Cornwall in England through his ships. He had fleets of ships that traded in all parts of the world. No, not all parts, all ports of the world. When Jesus' father Joseph died, Joseph of Arimathea, he's the next of kin. So he became the appointed legal guardian of Mary and the kids because he's the youngest brother of Mary's father. This explains Jesus' early association with his uncle and his ability to travel with him on his travels. It is fascinating to study this chapter and learn all those new information. It may not be so new to you, to some of you who are watching this, but it was for me. Keep in mind that my understanding of these scriptures, of these Gospels particularly, was only from the perspective of Mormonism, growing up Mormon. If I were still an active member of this church, I would have a hard time believing in all these things I've read about Jesus and the Essenes, I would probably just stick to what the leaders told me. But since I became an ex-Mormon, I started to look at other perspectives. And what I realized is, if it's so easy for the people to believe in Joseph Smith back in the 1800s, back when it was so easy for those people in the northeast part of the states to believe in a lot of superstitions, then why wouldn't I consider listening to the perspective of the people who also believe so strongly on their beliefs, like people who have gifts with hypnotherapy, especially past life regression therapy. Now, I wanted to tell you how Sudi described Jesus and his cousin John the Baptist in their youth. That part of this book was also so fascinating for me. But I'll leave all of that for the next chapter, Matthew chapter 3. Follow me on this publication on Medium, or subscribe to me on this channel so you wouldn't miss out when I publish my next video about these notes. Let's continue to study together. And I will see you on Matthew chapter 3. Have a disclaimer in this video, including the previous one and the next videos to come. I'm going to focus more on the information that I didn't know before. Like I said before, I was raised in a religious family, so most of what I know about the scriptures, if not all of it, is from a perspective of how Mormons understand them. Leaving the church a few months ago led me to seek out other books, to see things in a different light, different perspective. The Essenes and Qumran are one of the few things that I'm curious about. I knew about the Dead Sea Scrolls before when I was a teenager, but I never had a chance to dig deeper, mostly because I was discouraged to do so. A year ago, I mentioned in one of my Medium posts that I was going to reread the entire New Testament, the scriptures, specifically the New Testament, from the perspective of someone who have an idea about the Essenes, their ways, their beliefs, based on the books I've read. That was a year ago, and now I'm finally doing it. Another disclaimer, I'm not an expert, alright? If you do a Google search on the author of this book, Dolores Cannon, you will learn about her work, which is hypnotherapy, specifically specialty on past life regression. I'm not here to convince you that it's possible, nor would I convince you to believe the opposite, which is not to believe in any of that at all. What I've done for this video and the previous video and the following videos to come is to refer to all the information I've gathered from books I've read as I now reread the Gospel according to Matthew. As I begin to study the Torah, which is the Christians' 5 books of Moses, starting with, I have here the Tanakh, this includes the Torah, starting with Genesis, I'm going to refer to my personal experience with the Jews. Since I moved here in Lakewood, New Jersey, this is a Jewish town, or a town with a lot of Jewish communities, a place like Brooklyn, New York. I'm also going to refer to other information I got from reading other books and learning a little bit about Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism. We will go through that in a couple of weeks or months, but for now, we are rereading from this book, the New Testament. With my explanations, I will focus mostly on what I've learned from this book, Jesus and the Essenes. Now, past life regression therapy or hypnotherapy is how Dolores got all the information about Jesus' life through someone's past life, Sudi, an Essene. And she met this young office girl who used to work in the Air Force. And since this girl has a Christian background, it was also hard for her to believe that in her past life she was once an Essene. And what more is that this Essene knew Jesus personally. His name is Sudi. Dolores, the author of this book, confirmed all that information she got from this girl during their sessions while she's in trance by talking to rabbis and other theologians. So, many historians and theologians believe that Jesus was an Essene, or at least walk with them. Now we'll start with reading chapter 2.